Welcome to the Metro Munk Podcast, your sanctuary for self-discovery, personal growth, and emotional healing. I'm your host, Parag Lokande, a shadow coach, spiritual mentor, seeker, poet, and a student of life. This podcast is a heartfelt journey into understanding and embracing your true self. It is designed to help you navigate the complexities of the human experience with wisdom and compassion. Join me on a journey to self-discovery and personal growth as we explore the power of self-healing. Hey everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of the Metro Munk Podcast. This is Parag. We are on episode 48 and we're continuing our journey through the I-Breath framework. We've looked at I for intention, B for breath. So today is about R, which stands for releasing the story and instead fully being present with the sensations and emotions that come up. And now this can be a little cliche because we hear a lot of this going on around us. Social media is constantly talking about somatic body work and that sort of stuff. But I wanted to take a different approach today and sort of land the importance of this step, because if you miss this step, there's a high chance you would land up thinking your feelings instead of feeling them. So, and again, this is important because we want our emotions to give us the story. We want our emotions to give us that information or the knowledge we are seeking. And that's why we want to pay attention to what they're telling us instead of what the mind's trying to assume or call it. And let's look at an example of how this can, or a scenario of how this can play out. So, let's say you have a trigger that showed up, and there's a trigger, you've just been triggered, and you want to work on it. Let's say something's just happened, and it's a good chance it'll come with the heavy and disproportionate emotional charge, as all triggers do. And which then also means that this will bring with it all the stories of your mind. Your mind just wants to blame or judge or play victim or whatever. So let's say you've just been triggered, you've sat down to process your triggers, you've set an intention about your session. Let's say your intention is to, have clarity, or you want to see beyond the obvious, or whatever it is for you. And if you haven't yet listened to episode 46, I would actually invite you to do that, because we unpack a lot in detail about how to actually set an intention and what are the qualities of setting intentions. So let's say you've done that, and you've then withdrawn yourself into a room. It's an uninterrupted space. You close your eyes and you start preparing your breath to connect with your emotions. And once again, if you don't know what that is, I would recommend listening to the previous episode. In fact, the best way to listen to this podcast is from the oldest episode to the newest one, because I've sort of stacked each episode on top of other as chapters in the book. So, let's say you've started to fall into the breathing pattern. You're trying, but something's not feeling right. You're not feeling as relaxed, or you're not feeling as much in the body, or you just keep escaping to the mind because the trigger is just too much, too strong. And you're constantly stuck in this mental chatter or mentation, and you can't help but get lost in the story. So let's say you can't help curse or blame or judge the person who's just triggered you. There's too much of emotional charge, and so high that you can't even bother processing your emotions. And so there may be an impulse with that to act, to express maybe to type that email or send that text message or make a call to let so-and-so know how you feel. Or maybe you want them to know how mean they have been or how cruel they have been treating you. Or if not, then maybe you want to understand why this keeps happening, or why people just can't stop doing what they're doing to you. So like, let's say you're stuck in your head for something. You're trying to solve this conundrum. Or if not all that, you may even be doubting whether you're experiencing is real, or am I making it up, or am I going crazy? Look, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. What is happening here is you're basically stuck in a story of your mind. In other words, you've made some assumptions. These assumptions have some typical boundaries. It's a perspective, you can say, or you can call it a rendered reality with limited boundaries. And this can only feel like you're in a maze, with so many alternative paths to think about the situation, or nooks and turns to solve these problems. Yeah. And this is literally what I mean by being in your head instead of being in the body. In fact, if you can be aware enough at this point, you will also notice there is a particular breathing pattern that goes with that. Not the one we want, but a certain shallow breathing pattern which will keep you in this loop of thoughts. This is your mind trying to find a solution to keep you safe. It's trying to help you avoid the emotional charge that may be sitting or you're feeling in the body. So it's a program, you can say. In fact, a program you yourself have created someday back in your childhood, where you told your body, look, I can't handle this emotional charge. Please help me look away. And look, rightfully so. You are very young. Maybe your body wasn't matured enough. Maybe your body itself decided that, look, this is not the time for it. So the mind then responded in a certain way. So it became a program. And what happens is, we grow up, these programs are still playing in our heads. And so when we encounter emotional triggers, our minds often generate these stories, blame, judgments, rationalizations, so it can keep us looking outwards, keep us projecting. And the purpose of these programs is to shield us from the discomfort, or to help us scan threats, so then we can launch into action. This mental activity, you can also call it a defense mechanism. What it's really doing is helping you divert your attention from the underlying emotional experience. And while it may have worked for you in your childhood, and it had kept you safe, etc., but if you've made a decision to do this work, then we want to be going the other way, not being stuck in the mind's program. You see, when you really zoom into this whole program, or the way the mind works, the reality is you're only conscious of the tip of the iceberg of whatever happened to you in the past, that event or that trauma. A lot more is sitting in the body and is waiting to be understood. And that looks like having to complete the experience of that trauma, which you parked aside when you were little, when you paused because it was too much when you were young. But now as an adult, you are trying to complete that experience of the trauma that happened in the past. So you have to move towards, symbolically speaking, reading the rest of the pages in your book. Being conscious of just the tip of the iceberg is like staying in the story, staying in your head. And it's like reading the same page again and again, hoping to find answers that are actually on the rest of the pages of the book. But you keep staying on the same page, in the same maze. You're trying to read between the lines. You're trying to read the same words again to see if you missed anything, or a sentence or whatever, expecting to find answers that are not there. This is what mentation looks like. This is why thoughts go again in circles. And this is why we keep thinking, or we keep feeling stuck. Instead, what we need is to move forward so we can read the rest of the pages. And to do that, you have to turn the first page, which means you have to release the story that is playing out in your head. And this is a conscious decision where you have to tell yourself, I've heard this many times. I've been in this maze quite a lot. I've seen these thoughts play out again and again. They're no different every time. And therefore, I need to turn this page and keep reading. And genuinely, all the answers you seek are already there in the body. And I often say these are in form of nuggets of wisdom that can be found inside each emotion. Just like a fortune cookie. You'll not find them in the mind. You'll actually find them with your emotions. So while the mind spins its stories, the body keeps holding on to these unprocessed emotions, waiting for your acknowledgement. And then we also know that these suppressed feelings manifest as physical sensations, tightness, restlessness, yada, yada, yada. So to truly process our emotions, or releasing the story, what I'm really trying to get to is we must consciously choose to release the mind's programming or the narrative, and instead consciously immerse ourselves in the bodily sensations. It is literally a reminder, a conscious reminder, a conscious action to turn the page or to stop engaging in the mentation or repetitive thoughts or impulses to act on them. And we see this time and time again. I'm sure we all have these friends, relatives, cousins, siblings, whatever, who may get triggered and who just keeps calling you, and they keep repeating the same things again and again. And you may have heard this so often that you go, whoa, why do they keep doing this? Why can't they instead do something new, right? So healing is not about suppressing or escaping our emotions, but it's about embracing them fully by releasing the mind's story and then connecting to the body's wisdom. And so when we do that, we open ourselves to another level of possibility. Now, please don't forget, this is a journey of patience, compassion, and willingness. And the willingness to explore the depths of your experiences, right? It is not going to come in one go. It is just like a gym. It takes time to train this muscle. And this comes from the reminder that your body holds a wisdom that your mind's actually seeking. By releasing that story and tuning into your body's sensation or turning the page, you're actually moving towards the fuller story. Okay, so how do we do this? Yeah, how do you snap out of the story and detach from it? Because let's be honest, it can be difficult to even be aware. And we all know the feeling when the mind hijacks the system, right? When triggers are so strong, the reaction is so disproportionate. All you want to do is to think of what you're going to do to that person who's caused you pain. It becomes an obsession, and you cannot stop the mind. You just cannot help yourself. So again, very natural. Everyone's experienced this, including me, right? So that's just being human. So how do you then do this? How do you snap out of that story? In fact, the very emotions are causing these thoughts to go wild. Yeah. So it's like a catch-22. You want to get to the emotions and process them out to stop these thoughts. But the thoughts are just so overpowering that it's trapped you. And just like a boiling pot of water giving out hot steam, your thoughts just keep steaming out of you and you can't make it go away. So how do you do this? How do you snap out? This is where meditation becomes an amazing tool. It's a great tool. If you've already been meditating, then you've already sort of learned how to watch your thoughts or see them pass by. If you meditated, then you would have developed some distance with yourself, some distance from the story. And if you've been able to do that in the past, then this is what you need to do in this moment when thoughts are racing. You need to fall into that watcher, observer stance and just wait and be patient, watching all that's going on the mind's movie screen. Yeah. And I'm hoping that in this age where mindfulness is really mainstream, and most of us, if you visit a therapist, you'll be given mindfulness exercises, or if you're into spiritual practices, you would have been exposed to some form of meditation. So I'm hoping that this is not new, or this is not something you've never heard of. And then, the next question then arises, how long do I do this? How long do I sit in meditation? Because remember, the goal is to be more active with the experience, not passively watching everything happening and passing you by. So how long do you do this? Well, the answer is until the charge has calmed down, until you're no longer trapped in the mind's prison, until you've got enough distance where the charge has calmed down. So what's happening here is, as you're consciously watching and being present with whatever's going on, you're choosing to consciously not engage with that mind's movie. In other words, give in to the mind's programming. And it's important to note that this is not the same as avoiding it. This is not the same as doom scrolling or binging on Netflix, because you're not looking away from the mind's movie. You're not distracting yourself. In fact, you're patiently and lovingly waiting for the mind's tantrums to calm down so you can then interact with it. Another way to look at it is to say, let's say you have a friend that's in distress. He or she has come to you. They're all over the place. What do you do when that happens? Do you wait patiently and lovingly and hold them? Or do you start dumping stuff on them, dumping solutions on them, start blaming them for their weak mind, or blame them for not listening to your advice? Or say, if a little child has come to you upset, they're crying, throwing tantrums, what would you do? Would you open your arms and just give them a hug, making them feel safe? Or do you instead send them to their room and tell them to stop crying and then come back? It's the same thing. When the mind's going nuts, when the mind's in distress, when the mind's throwing your tantrums, full of how you want to do so many things to that person that's hurt you, or all the many things you will do in the future to protect yourself. When the mind's, doing that, it is a conscious, patient, and a loving choice to wait for this to pass, to just hold space for this. And you're not avoiding it, you're not looking away. Instead, you're actually looking right at it and being more present. Okay, now, all this assuming you have been meditating for a while. Yeah, like I said, practices like mindfulness or vipassana, etc., there is a high chance most of us are doing some form of mindfulness practice every day. And these practices are actually quite good, and they help you in reaching the observer state. So I'm sure you will have your own technique to get there. However, what if you've never meditated? What if you haven't developed a certain distance from yourself? What do you do then? How do you achieve the same effect then? There are a couple of techniques that you can use as a workaround. Although I would still like to think that there's no shortcut to this, but there are a couple of techniques that I've found to be very effective. Let's look at a couple of them as a way of working around. Also, know that you may have your own, or you may come up with your own technique. You may have your own way to do this, so there's no hard and fast rule. The goal is, as long as you can reach in that observer state where you're present, you're not engaging in the mind's chatter, that's pretty much the ultimate goal. However you get there is not important. Like, the goal is to get there. Now, one of the techniques I often use in my sessions is, in your case, you'd probably be doing this yourself. So let's say you sit yourself down, it's an uninterrupted space, you take away all distractions, put your phones away, make sure no one's disturbing you, and let's say you start with closing your eyes. What you can do here is imagine you're walking out of your body, and once you do that, you might even want to turn back and look at yourself sitting there with eyes closed. So you want to walk out of your body and go back in time and visit that old self, the old version from a few hours ago or whenever you were triggered. As if you are that friend that is holding space for yourself. As if you are being that loving, patient presence for your old self. And what this does is, it instantly puts you in a second person perspective and detaches you away from the story. Now, it's difficult to go into a guided meditation here, but I thought this is just to give you an overview of one of the techniques. And once you're successful in doing this, all you're doing is simply holding space for your old self, trying to be empathic. And you may even say things like, "I'm sorry you feel like this again," or "I'm here for you. I will not abandon you. You're allowed to feel this way. Your emotions are valid. It's okay to feel hurt. I'm here to support you," or whatever. You might even want to give your old self a hug. You might even want to say, "You're doing the best you can. I see your pain." This act alone should help you disconnect from the story in your head and maybe even help you get emotional. Sometimes the old version of ourselves that was triggered simply needs that attention and acknowledgement to help us fall into the body or connect to our emotions. So this is one technique that has worked wonders. So see if this works for you. The other thing you can do is pretty much start journaling. Just start writing down your thoughts. And this can help you process and release them, like get them out of your head and onto the paper. And then maybe you want to read back to yourself, or maybe this whole process of journaling has sort of helped you pass through or sort of replace the same act of meditating or watching your thoughts go by. So consider keeping a journal where you can express, what's on your mind, and this act can then provide clarity and distance from your thoughts. But once again, as I said, everyone may have their own technique. Remember, this work is very intuitive with ourselves. We already have a very deep intuitive sense of how to talk to ourselves. In fact, we do this. We all have memories where we talk to our mind. We talk to ourselves. or console ourselves when we go on walks. So there is a very unique way of doing this. So you may have your own technique. So if you're with me so far, you may have guessed the real reason why we're doing this, the real reason why we are releasing the story. What we're trying to do is to not be led by the unconscious processes of the mind. We don't want to keep wandering with the mind. When I say we, what I mean is we don't want our attention to follow our wild racing thoughts and get pulled in every direction. Which is really what happens if you see when you're in your meditation. And that just keeps you pulled in all different directions. What we are in fact trying to do is to do the opposite. We're trying to make the mind follow the attention to wherever it wants to lead. So one is a following, the other is a leading. One is unconscious process, the other is a conscious process. The former is trying to read the same page, hoping to find something new. The other is to consciously turn the page to keep reading. And where do we want to go? Where do you want to lead the mind to? Or where do we want to consciously go? This is exactly what the next step is all about. E for engaging with the unconscious imagery, or turning the other pages in the book, or moving towards the body, or moving into the body, which, as you also understand, as something comes with its own breathing pattern. And to do that, you've got to be actively curious and conscious and guiding the process. You need to be in a stance where, I wouldn't say you are in control, but you are present with the experience that's unfolding. You can't be unconsciously trying to feel your emotions. So folks, with that, we wrap up today's episode. Today we've explored how our mind often weaves these narratives to shield us from the rawness of our emotions, and how this is trying to keep us anchored in the past. And by choosing to release these narratives, what we're doing is granting ourselves freedom from that. And therefore, allowing us to sit with our emotions, which then naturally begins the process of transformation. So remember, your body holds the wisdom, your mind's always seeking. And by tuning into these signals, and in psychology, we call these signals interoception. Even embracing its messages, what you're doing is you're paving the path for some real self-discovery. So folks, if this episode has resonated with you, consider revisiting episode 46 and 47, where we've delved into setting intention and connecting with your breath. These two episodes are foundational steps, which will then support you in releasing the story. Looking ahead, our next episode will explore E, which stands for engaging with the unconscious imagery, where we'll delve into the symbols and patterns that emerge when we connect deeply with our inner selves. Until then, I invite you to reflect on the stories you tell yourself. Ask, are they serving your growth or are they holding you back? Choose presence over narrative, and observe the shifts that happens after. So thank you for being part of this journey. If you found this valuable if you found value in today's discussion, please consider leaving a review or sharing this episode with someone who might benefit. Your support helps me reach more souls seeking healing and understanding. Stay connected, stay present, and as always, breathe deeply. Thank you, much love, and take care.